All right, and so he says we'll turn next to an important fact that the relationship between observation and theories, after which we'll look at the requirements for a successful scientific theory. So what is the relationship between observation and theories? To construct a scientific theory, he tells us, and he also says this is also sometimes called a model, right?
Mm-hmm.
We first carefully consider our observations and then tell a plausible story that might explain the observations, right? That's how we construct a theory, right? And even the considered gap, though, there's a gap here between separating observations from theory that can make arriving at a decent theory an ordeal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even once we've constructed a theory, we can never observe that it's correct, right? So one major complication in all of this is that there's usually more than, and here's one of the issues now, there's more than one theory or hypothesis that will match the observations, as we just saw with the, Copernicus Ptolemaic debate, right? There's more than one theory that can match all of the observations that we have.
And
right?
it's not just those two. There can be also other ones. So the matrix can also be in that group. But it's there's no center of the universe because there's no universe.
Yeah. So this is called, and he labels it here, empirical adequate, right? Empirically adequate. In other words, our sense perceptions, our empirical observations are adequate for both or several theories, right? All our observations can fit any of these various theories. So each theory is empirically adequate. Our sense perceptions can fit do fit all of the various theories, right? So he says in such cases, the observations alone then can't settle the disagreement, right? Sun is over here, the sun is over there. Sun is over here at one time, the sun is over there at one time. So how does that settle whether or not the sun is moving around the earth or the earth is spinning? Well, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Which
Both theories are empirically adequate
Right.
to the observations that we make.
and logically sound.
Yes.
So when we go back to Hume's fork, we both have observations that are the same, that are agreed upon, and we both have the same laws of logic that are the same. So how do we come up with information?
Yeah, right. So that's the issue. He says, so experience alone can't adjudicate between equally empirical adequate theories, right? Excuse me. Now, again, he's throwing a lot of terms, highfalutin sounding terms here at us. But the basic idea here is our sense experience, our observations, what we observed, right, can't adequately judge between the various theories because both of the theories fit our observation, right?
So there's got to be other criteria that we can go
Right.
up.
So other criteria have to play. So, for instance, simplicity, right, which is the simpler theory,
Yeah.
right?
Old Occam's razor.
Yeah.
Limited imagination, Occam's razor. Yeah.
Ontological and conceptual economy, aesthetic considerations, suggestive mathematical symbolism, how well a theory fits with the rest of what we believe about the world. All these types of things are in a host, he says, of hard to characterize factors. So we look at, and oftentimes these are called empirical empirical values that we attach to a particular theory. So the simplest theory then is more likely to be the best theory, something like that. Right?
Like if you look at Newton, he still held to the theory of the spheres in the universe, and it really was a huge revolution to think that elliptical orbits were something that were out there, or that just throwing off the shackles of geocentrism. I mean, you almost had that for all of human history.
So Aristotle had taught that perfection in circles. So it had to be a perfect circle. That's why they were in the heavens, because where the perfection lies, and so everything revolved in perfect circles. And so this egg-shaped kind of circle wasn't even thought of.
Yeah, good old Kepler came along and saved us with that.
So it says the point now is that there can be more than one possible theory that empirically matches a set of observations. That is, there can be more than one theory that our senses perceive, that's empirically, right, matches the observations. And philosophers of science call this that the observations underdetermine the theory, right? The observations do not allow us to determine which theory is the correct theory. So we call that the underdetermination of theory by observation, right? That's underdetermination, another kind of highfalutin man. Observations alone, which is where the theoretical rubber meets the empirical road, he tells us, cannot fully determine or nail down a unique theory. Indeed, one philosopher, Quine, famously said there are an infinitely number of empirically adequate theories for any given set of observations, right?
Especially if you're Hawkins or Krauss, who has an infinite number of universes.
So there are an infinite number of...
even more.
Yeah. Of course, he says some will be more plausible than others, right? I mean, space aliens might be, right? Dump the water on me and that's why I'm wet and it's not raining, right? But, plausibility, by the way, has to do with, again, the way we believe the world is, our background information, background knowledge, and how what we think could or could not happen. He gives us an analogy here, right, of this XY graph.
So we have this theory, and it's pressure and temperature. They're somehow related, and we have a theory that if they're related, we can come up with a mathematical formulation or relationship that pressure and temperature seem to have. And so there's a lot of different ways in which we can plot this graph. We can draw a straight line from one point to the next, or we can kind of do this weird old zigzag to get to every other point along the way to our 2 points that we're drawing a conclusion from. And so to believe that the temperature and pressure have anything to do with each other is a factor in deciding. I mean, that's a theory. We don't observe those things. We just kind of assume that they have a correlation between them, and it could be complex. It could be simple. We don't really know, and so. There are an infinite number of ways that we can connect these points, and the data alone cannot make the decision for you. You'll need additional temperature, pressure data, or some other criteria, or both.
Right.
So it's not as simple as you have this, and you just draw, your
so
mathematical
the simplest
equation.
explanation is a straight line, but that may not be how these things are connected, right? So you have one data point, so you have your XY axis here, you have one data point here, you have one data point there. Well, I guess this is the way it works. Well, no, not necessarily. It could be all kinds of things going on.
Logarithmic. It could be.
You can have squiggly lines all over the place that finally meet that.
Could dip down in negative X territory. You never know.
Yeah. Right. So, of course, what he points out that that these things are even connected is kind of curious. We make that assumption that we can connect these things mathematically.
Yep.
That's an assumption that we make, may or may not be the case. Right?
I always have to do this one because it's always my favorite because it was a good little meme online. Is that back in the day you had more pirates and less climate change. Today we have less pirates and more climate change. Therefore, there's a correlation of some factor between pirates and climate change. So all we need to do is increase the number of pirates. We lower the climate.
Ooh, wow. What a
straight line.
Brilliant theory, right? Yeah, based on the data that we observe.
I'm going to be a member of Congress in no time.
And the Nobel Prize, right?
Yes. Well, so Sweden has a pirate party, so I could just as likely join them.
Yeah. Good.